Plus, the statewide mandate for sexual harassment and non-discrimination training. Dr. Tana Session explains how more companies are focusing on unconscious and implicit bias in the workplace.
Due to a state law passed in 2019, managers and employees across California are starting to receive 30-day notices to complete online training courses about sexual harassment and non-discrimination in the workplace.
In light of recent social unrest, there will be a stronger emphasis on decision-making filters called unconscious and implicit bias. Joining us is author and consultant, Dr. Tana Session. Dr. Session, good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Many times you help us by breaking down complicated issues into acronyms for us to better understand. So what is first of all, the definition of unconscious bias?
Yeah, so I definitely want to start with an acronym again today. So we're going to use BIAS as the acronym. And the first letter B stands for beliefs. So unconscious bias oftentimes is driven by our belief systems. And that could be based on our culture, that could be based on our experiences, that could be based even on our exposure to the media. And you have to understand that our brain is taking in 11 million bits of information, but can only process 40. So there's these filters that come into play. Now there's over 100, almost 200 actual biases that our brains are constantly feeding off of. And in my diversity and inclusion work, I oftentimes have to challenge hiring managers to find out why they're choosing a particular resume, why they decided to hire a particular candidate, because a lot of times there's a bias that's coming into play. So I'll give you an example. When I say the initial CEO, oftentimes the first image that comes to mind is an older white gentleman. And when I pose that question to audiences in my trainings and my keynote speech, that is overwhelmingly the response as well. And I even challenge people to look on the internet and just look up images for CEO, and overwhelmingly, that's exactly what you will see. So even the internet has a bias.
What are specific behaviors of unconscious bias that are more problematic in the workplace?
Well, with the next letter I, I'm going to cheat just a little bit.
Okay.
So for I in bias, it stands for intersectionality and microaggressions. So these are the two drivers behind what really impacts us in the workplace as it relates to bias. So with intersectionality, you're looking at different characterizations of individuals, such as their gender, their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation. And when you overlap all of those, they create interdependent systems of discrimination. Then when you look at microaggressions, you have examples of that's when you have certain comments or slurs or questions that may be unintentional, but harmful to the individual which they're being aimed at. So an example would be saying to a Black candidate, "Oh, you're so articulate," or asking a Black female coworker, "Can you touch her hair because she's recently changed her style?" Or even a new Asian American employee and you ask where are they from. So the assumption there is that they're not from the US. That's a microaggression. And I tell people they feel like tiny paper cuts that ultimately become gaping wounds, not visible to you or me, but to the individual they impact, they're very harmful.
Absolutely. What's another factor? I guess we're on to the letter A.
Yeah, so A is for attitudes and bias. And when we let our attitudes actually around people, places, and situations drive our decision making, oftentimes it will create a negative impact. So we're actually letting this bias take over as it relates to the attitudes that we have about individuals.
Is implicit bias the same as unconscious bias?
So I get that question quite a lot. And they're two heads of the same coin, I'll tell you that. So with unconscious bias, we're letting our judgments drive us. And with implicit bias, that's going to be the next final letter, which is S for stereotypes. So when we let negative stereotypes impact our decision making, again, it's like judging a book by its cover. You're not really getting to the real root of these individuals. So recently I was doing a training and I had an Asian American woman who told me that she had recently went to her dentist, and the dental hygienist, who happened to be a white male rather, asked her if she was from China and had she ever eaten dog meat. So of course, that's a stereotype. And I would have to ponder to wonder if his stereotypes impacts his impression of all Asians, because if so, that is a key problem.
Yeah. So what's the key takeaway for our viewers and for employees who are receiving the mandatory harassment and non-discrimination training?
Well, first and foremost, I want everyone to know that we're all guilty of unconscious and implicit bias. We have to remain self-aware of how they impact our decision-making about people and places and situations, and also understanding the impact of microaggressions and intersectionality is going to be very important. Because if not, if we don't pay attention to it, what happens is we create these homogenous workplaces where it's not a sense of inclusion and belonging for all employees.
Dr. Tana M. Sessions' latest book titled Working While Black, A Woman's Guide to Stop Being the Best Kept Secret. You can check out her website and follow her across social media. Thank you. Always good to see you.
You too. Thank you.